When I first came to Iwate Prefecture in Japan to live and work in 2020, I knew where I'd be going. Iwate is the second largest prefecture after the island of Hokkaido and has one of the smallest population densities out of all of Japan's prefectures. It's a place that not many people know a lot about, to be honest, except for its recent history of the earthquake and ensuing tsunami. It's with that thought that I'll never forget a class that I had with one of my schools in the town of Taro, where I am today, a town that was almost wiped from the map by the tsunami. It has been a large inspiration for the fictional town of Kaita in my manga, Future Saviours. The class was tasked with coming up with famous places in towns, Iwate Prefecture, and Japan as a whole, that everyone knew about. There was much discussion, much I didn't understand due to not being in Japan for that long, and my Japanese back then was quite poor. When the class was called to talk about their ideas, many ideas were floated around, such as the Tokyo Skytree or TV Tower, Universal Studios in Osaka, Mount Fuji, and more local places like Konjikido and Hiraizumi. Beyond that, it came to places in Taro itself, which has been part of the wider city of Miyako since 2005. One of the kids, when asked of a famous place that many people worldwide knew about, he said without flinching, the Sannoiwa. I could see in his eyes how proud he was of his answer, but inside I felt nobody knows about the Sannoiwa really, probably not even in wider Japan, let alone in the world. At this point, a time I was devising ideas for a manga, one that would become Future Saviours. On Wednesdays after work, I'd often come to the Sannoiwa and harbour and reflect on my day, my time in Japan so far as a whole, and look out on the ocean and see firsthand how much destruction the tsunami had wrought on this town. At the time, I was dealing with a great deal of isolation and loneliness, and I made a video where I worked on some very early designs for Saki and a manga idea. This was well before I'd completed the initial story for Future Saviours. For me, Taro, its harbour, its places like the Sannoiwa, its geography as a whole, and its history has been essential for me to build the foundations of the story. I really felt extremely deeply that people need to, in some form, be able to feel the Japan that I feel in Taro, and Iwate as a whole. For many, mention Japan and all they see is an otaku paradise, futuristic robots, pristine Tokyo streets, modern technology and a sea of skyscraping glass and steel. Reality, as with all things in life, is far more nuanced and therefore interesting. I wanted through the manga for people to see an interpretation of a small community in Iwate, its scenery, its social makeup, where everyone knows everyone, for good and bad, but a beautiful place precariously situated on the Pacific coast. One day I wanted to say I had informed a few more people about the Sannoiwa's existence, just as that boy felt it should be known. And though it may sometimes be considered morbid, I'd often take a walk from the school up to the Jounji Temple in Taro and walk up the hillside where so many recent graves are located and feel the tragedy very much firsthand, and be able to survey the view where once the majority of the town once existed. It is now fronted by an absolutely huge towering seawall blocking out the existence of the sea, and a lot of the land has yet to be redeveloped, if it ever will. Certainly these places have greatly informed how I have written and drawn the story. I have been careful not to take too much from reality, because it can be hurtful for those who recognise a place that they once loved but has now vanished. But I wanted enough of it to shine through, to show that I cared enough to notice the small details of a place that so many loved, a place that so many called home, and thankfully still can call home. Future Saviours had 3 major revisions to the story since I finalised it in December 2020, but if anything, the roots and the features of Taro shine through even more strongly than before in the final 3rd revision. I hope to start releasing the revised beginning of the manga soon on Patreon, now that my wrist is beginning to feel that it's up to drawing again. And at some point in 2023, I will release these pages publicly, but first I need to do it where I have the time and space to be experimental. That is fundamental to some of the key feelings and riffs that I want to get through early on in the story. But I hope from what you've seen in this video, You can see how much Taro has influenced the beginning of the manga and its scenes. My key phrasing will always be, I wanted to show that I cared enough to notice.